Hello, everyone. We'll just begin in 1 or 2 minutes. Just getting started. So I'll first start with the whole question we were discussing last time, which was on tax incidence and dead weight loss and consumer producer surplus and taxes. Everything that happens, the whole mechanics of imposing taxes, basically. And then we will move on to week 4. So while I'm discussing taxes, if there is any question you have from the content of week 3, you can let me know. So does anyone have any questions from week 3? Any questions from week 3? No? Okay. So let's first start with the tax incidence part. Okay. So let's just start a new scenario where okay, can you see my screen? Okay, I'm
Yes, ma'am.
assuming you can see. Okay. Okay, thanks. So the first question is like, first let us just understand what really happens when a tax is levied and how is it different when it is imposed on the producer versus the consumer. So this is one first formula which I wanted to share. It's not exactly a formula, it's more like common sense kind of a thing, but it is just something which makes makes the calculation a little bit easier sometimes, right? So CTB is consumer tax burden, PTB is producer tax burden, and let me see if I can open it in Office. Yeah. How do I think just trying to make it full screen, otherwise you can't see it properly. And does anybody know how to make it full screen? Sorry, none. This should be it. I think it's not loading properly. Okay, give me a moment. Let me see if I can figure this out. Yeah, it's not loading properly. One minute, just give me a moment to. Yeah, it has hanged. So okay, so in the meantime, while my app is restarting, the basic question to understand in taxation, elasticity. Okay, we had discussed elasticity last time, but if there's anything specific you want to ask, then just type it into the question box. Um, yes, the problem is the play button is supposed to play the slideshow, but it is hanging. It is not working properly. That's the problem. That's what I'm trying to just fix. I'm just restarting the app and seeing if that works. I don't know why this is working like this. Yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, I was saying that different types of elasticity. Okay, I will mention it. Yeah, I think maybe the internet is a bit slow or something. Come on. Any other questions? No. Okay, great. So okay, I've gotten this to work finally. Yeah. So like I was saying, the main thing to remember in taxation is that you have to be careful about the price P, what you're using as the price P. Okay. The main issue or confusion people usually get is what you're using as price. What, and I'll just explain it in a moment. You will understand. But P plus T or minus T, those kind of things kind of become confusing. Let's start again. Oh, okay. Can you see my screen now? I hope you can see it now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is what I actually wanted, which took so long. Okay, how do I annotate this? Yeah. So this is consumer tax burden, and this is producer tax burden. Okay, so the two things happen in a situation where you have taxes. First thing that happens is that if the tax is imposed on the seller, right? The tax is imposed on the seller. Then what happens? The tax, what I'm saying imposed as in the statutory tax is on the seller. Then this is something like what happens. Right now, I drew this diagram last time in the class and it became messy. So I decided to draw it properly like this. Now, a lot of things that are happening in this diagram. So as you see, the first thing, the first rule you can say of calculating taxes or doing anything with the situation with the tax is that you have to first be clear about which curve is going to shift. Okay, so if the statutory tax is on the seller, tax imposed means the as per the government, the tax is going to be paid by the seller, then it is the curve of the seller which is going to shift. Okay, so this is shifting upwards, you can say, or leftwards if you want to look at it that way. But generally, it is going to be this way. Like if it's a subsidy, it's a different case. But and how much it is going to shift by this distance, which I've marked as T, is this distance between the two um, curves. Okay. Now, initially, what was the equilibrium point? This point was the equilibrium point. This point was the equilibrium point. The where the blue line intersects the black line, that is the equilibrium point, which let me mention it as E. And the price was P star. This was before imposition of taxes. Now, after a tax is levied on the seller, his curve is going to shift upwards by amount T. And where the new curve, the shifted curve intersects the same demand curve, so nothing is happening to the demand curve because there is no direct imposition of tax on the buyer. It is only on the seller. So the demand curve remains the same. The function of our demand is not changing. Only the function for supply is changing. So this new E prime is the new equilibrium, and the price here is, say, suppose P prime. This point is P prime, and this is the price which the consumer is paying. This is the market price on the good, on the item. But what is the seller getting out of this price? Now, the market price is P prime, but out of that P prime, which is a higher price, right? P prime is greater than P star. You can see this is P prime and this is P star. P prime is more than P star. So in the market, the price is increasing. How much? By how much? It is increasing by P prime minus P star, right? But for the seller, out of that P prime, he has to pay T also. He is paying a tax T also. So for him, the price we can say is P prime minus T, which is less than P star. So see, for a seller, the higher the price, the better, right? For a seller, it's always good. If the price is more, that's what the supply curve indicates. The supply curve is upward sloping because as the price of some good increases, the sellers are only going to be happier. Like, yeah, we'll sell even more if the price increases, right? We'll supply more. For a consumer, if the price is increasing, it's a bad thing, right? Because we don't want to pay so much. It's coming from our own income, from our own pockets, right? So in the case of taxes, both the things which are happening are effectively bad things, right? Because for the consumer, the price is increasing by this much, P price minus P star, and for this producer, the price is decreasing by this much. From P star, it is becoming P star minus 2, from P star to P prime minus T, right? This is P prime. So for the seller, the price is decreasing, and for the consumer, the price is increasing. That is the total effect of taxation in the case of the tax imposed on seller. Now, another thing that is happening is that you can see that the quantity traded is now Q prime, which is much lesser than Q star. So there's a lot of people who could have bought the good at in this whole range, in this whole price range at the original level, but they are not buying it. That transaction is not happening. Only up till here. The transaction is happening only up till here. Let me mark this. Only this part is transactional till here, right? Only this transaction is happening. The other transactions which could have happened, all these transactions also could have happened. Sorry, not the upper part. Oops, sorry. How do you need? Yeah, not this part. Till the blue curve, that could have happened. This is not happening, right? So I would It looks a bit dirty, so I'm erasing this, but I think you understood the point what I'm trying to make. So you can understand that there is some transactions which could have happened or which should have happened but are not happening. That is what we call as the dead weight loss. So the dead weight loss is this triangle here, which is made up of transactions which could have happened but are not happening. Now, what happens to consumer surplus and producer surplus? This is the consumer and producer surplus initially, before taxes are imposed. This is what was happening. E was the equilibrium point, and the area bounded between the price level and the demand curve is the consumer surplus. Area bounded between the price level and the supply curve is the producer surplus. This was what was happening. Now, what is happening? You can see just from the diagram itself, you can see that it has shrunk. Both have shrunk, right? The consumer surplus is now just the green triangle, and the producer surplus is now just the orange triangle, red triangle, whatever color you think it is. So both have shrunk, and shrunk into where? Shrunk. Why? Because firstly you have the tax revenue which goes to the government, so that you can say is in a way it is like a welfare thing, so it's included in total welfare, because taxes are eventually used by the government for building infrastructure and things like that, which are public goods. But that's not the only reason why consumer and producer surplus have shrunk. So this blue triangle, this blue hatching triangle, is what is the dead weight loss. I'm just writing this down, dead weight loss. And this is happening because, like I explained, many transactions could have happened, but they're not happening. Now, this is the basic principles of taxation, which we already discussed. I think Professor Vimal has explained most of this in the class. And this is like the simple version of what really happens. Now, I think he left this in the class for your own calculation. Like if you want, you can calculate it and see what happens if you impose the same tax T on the buyer instead of the seller. So what happens if you impose the same tax T on the buyer instead of the seller? Anybody wants to venture to answer? Does anything, what changes basically? Let me ask it that way. In this whole system, what is going to remain the same, if anything, and what will change? Any idea? Okay, let's look at this. So this is what happens. Still connected, right? Yeah, there's a lag. The screen is not shifted. Okay. It's not. I've actually enabled automatic recording, but it is not starting it. I don't know why. Thanks for letting me know. I didn't realize that the recording is not going on. Okay, well, we've missed maybe, I don't know how much, 7, 8 minutes. I think can be done now. So you can see that the consumer tax burden and producer tax burden remain the same, which is what I was asking in the beginning, that what do you think changes and what does not change? Which is, the thing which changes is the market price. P prime, you can see in the previous diagram, P prime was increasing. It was more than P star when it was imposed on seller. But when it is imposed on buyer, P prime is less than P star. So P prime is changing, the market price is changing. But the consumer tax burden and producer tax burden is not changing. It is the same. It works out to be the same. And this is the initial consumer surplus and producer surplus. And this is what the new consumer and producer surplus look like. They are also exactly the same. If you see, actually, even geometrically, if you see, they will work out to be the same. So eventually that means that this deadweight loss, this triangle, is also the same. You can see geometrically again that this works out to be the same. So the consumer tax burden and producer tax burden is the same, surplus is the same, deadweight loss is the same. What is changing is the price. Quantity is also going to be the same. If you see, that's kind of how it works out to be. So this is the simple, mechanics of what happens when you impose taxes. Now let's see what happens in special cases. So this is what happens when there is inelastic supply. Now, inelastic supply means that the seller has no option but to sell irrespective of what the price is, right? It is like he's constrained. For example, like say suppose there is some farmer and he has like 100 tons of potatoes piled up, or you can say a group of farmers who have 100 tons of potatoes piled up. Now, whatever the market price be, they have to sell those potatoes, right? Otherwise, they will rot, they will go bad, or even maybe it's not even potatoes, maybe it is some other vegetable which will go bad. Potatoes you can actually store, but say suppose it is some vegetable which will maybe something like carrots. So they have to sell it irrespective of what the price is in the market. They have no option but to sell it because otherwise they will lose a whole lot, right? They'll get zero otherwise on that. That is what we mean by inelastic supply, because sometimes people find it hard to imagine, oh, why would the supply be inelastic. So this is like a kind of a scenario in which you can think of supply being inelastic, right? So that is the kind of question which I had given last time in the class, where the supply was not a function of price at all. That is how you can tell whether the supply is inelastic. The supply is independent of the price in the market. It is fixed at some quantity Q star. You can see in this diagram the quantity is Q star. Now in this, if the say suppose the tax is imposed on the buyer, then what happens? The demand curve will shift because we have imposed a tax on the buyer. So the demand curve will shift downwards. That is what usually happens. Now the vertical distance between the two curves is T, like always. Now in this case, what happens is that the supply curve itself is a vertical line, right? So the whole market, the whole differential in the price itself is going to be T. Now see, in the previous case, the differential in the price, P and P star, were not varying by T. There was some other value by which they were varying. But in this case, oops, in this case, it is actually varying by T. Okay, forget it. I don't know why is it not sliding now. Okay, it's stuck. Why am I stuck? Is the audio still on? Am I still connected?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, because I don't know when I get disconnected, I just keep talking and everything gets disconnected. My slides are not moving. That's the problem. Oh God, I don't know why this is still not working. Okay. Yeah. I'm still not that comfortable with all these apps on iPad. They don't work like they're supposed to. Yeah. So this is what happens. Let me mark these things. So you can see that the yellow triangle was the consumer surplus, right? Before the tax imposition, and the blue rectangle was the producer surplus. Now, why is this the producer surplus? Because it's the area bounded between the supply line and the price line, right? The supply line as in the curve and the price line, the horizontal price line. Now, what is the area bounded between that? This is like it's a rectangle geometrically, right? So this whole rectangle is going to be the producer surplus. And in this case, in the case of the producer case, in the case of the producers in inelastic supply, it is bounded at the bottom by the um, P is equal to 0 line, right? So that is why you're getting a very nice rectangle here. But that is not going to happen in the case of inelastic demand, which we'll just come to that. So when we shift it, what happens when we shift it? Is there any change in the consumer surplus? No, right? This is the red, you can see the red triangle is geometrically exactly the same as the yellow triangle, right? So producer surplus is the only one which is getting affected. Consumer surplus is not affected. It's just sliding downwards. And what is the difference in the producer surplus? It is that blue rectangle part, which is still, not still this part. This is the loss in producer surplus. You can just write delta. And where is this part going? This is going into tax revenue. Okay. Now, in this case, there is no deadweight loss. Why is that? It is just because of the supply being inelastic. Because the supply is inelastic, what the producer is saying is that no matter what the price is, I'm going to keep supplying. And that is why that there is no change in the number of transactions that is taking place, which is why the quantity is not changing. Right? Is that making sense? Because the supply is inelastic, even after the change of prices, the supplier is still going to keep supplying the same quantity. So all the people who are willing to buy it are still going to buy it, right? So there is no change in consumer surplus, and it's a supplier who is paying the price. So the price for the buyer is remaining the same. This is PC. Oops, sorry. PC is still P star. It is only PS which is changing to P star minus T. So for the consumer, whether there is tax or there is no tax, there is not much difference. They were willing to buy, all the people who are willing to buy at P star level of pricing are still going to buy at P star pricing, because the producer is still willing to supply, even though his price has changed to P star minus T now. Which is why there is no loss in consumer surplus, because all the consumers who wanted to buy are still buying. But there is a loss in producer surplus because he wanted to get P star price for that quantity. Now he is forced to accept a price of P star minus T. So now his producer surplus is P star minus T into Q star instead of P star into Q star, right? And this is equal to, this quantity is equal to T into Q star, right? Is this clear to everybody? Can I move ahead? Okay, nobody's saying anything, so I'm assuming it's clear. Now, we'll just take the example of inelastic demand very quickly, just to explain what happens in this case. By now, hopefully you have understood the whole mechanics of taxation. Now, because it is, say suppose the tax is still imposed on the seller in the case of inelastic demand. Okay, it's a demand which is inelastic, but the tax is still on the seller. Okay, so it is still the supply curve which is shifting. The difference is that it is the demand which is vertical line instead of supply being a vertical line. See, when something is inelastic means they are stuck on that particular quantity for whatever constraints. For one of the examples of you can say inelastic demand is something like a rare drug, like insulin, or like you had this HCQS during COVID period, right? Uh, I don't remember the full form of it, but there's this basically this anti-malaria drug which was effective in the treatment of COVID, and people were buying it at like insane prices, and there was like a shortage of HCQS in the market, and international markets had kind of, restricted its supply and blah 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 blah, right? So but the demand was inelastic, because when it's a question of life and death, you will pay whatever you can the to get the drug. So you can think of those kind of scenarios as scenarios which, where people have inelastic demand. It's difficult to think of such scenarios because they don't happen very commonly. They're like very, and like hardly any goods like that for which somebody is going to be willing to pay any price, right? There's no like commonly found good which has an inelastic demand, because usually there's also like a lot of substitutes. So even if there's something like food, you know, demand for food broadly would be something like, could be more towards inelastic rather than elastic, right? But then there are so many varieties of food, right? So even if you just want to buy rice, there's rice from 30 rupees per kg to 300 rupees per kg. There's a whole range. So if there is, if you're not able to buy the rice for of one variety, you can always switch to rice of another variety. So which is why the demand doesn't truly remain inelastic. But broadly speaking, I think you would have probably understood by now what I mean when I say that the demand is inelastic. So now this is the supply curve. You impose the taxes, and it shifts upwards like it always does. And you can see that the price used to be P star initially at the original equilibrium. And now the price is P star um, plus T, right? Because um, this whole vertical thing is T. This should be P star actually. Got to put that. P star plus T is the new price. And why is that? Because the supply curve is shifting upwards by T, but the demand itself is vertical. So that difference is going to be T, geometrically speaking. And now you can see that, the whole scenario is kind of different here. Now, one thing which I think a lot of times people struggle to understand here is that in this case, the original consumer surplus is what? What do you think? Okay, forget this. This part I forgot to erase from the diagram. I made this in a hurry. Just ignore this part. This is not the consumer. Oh, sorry, tax burden. Yeah. Forget about the tax burden for now. Let's talk about the surplus. What is the surplus? Consumer surplus in this case. Originally, what was the consumer surplus? Does anybody want to venture a guess? What was the original consumer surplus? Original producer surplus is this red triangle, which I have marked the hatching in the picture. What was the consumer surplus? This whole thing is a consumer surplus till infinity. And why is that? Because the person is willing to pay an infinite amount of money for that good. If you're willing to pay infinite amount of money and you get that item for 1,000 rupees, your consumer surplus is infinite, right? Infinity minus 10 is still infinity, right? So if your demand being inelastic means that you are willing to pay an infinite, like, technically, mathematically speaking, infinite amount of money uh, for that good, right? It may be like, say, something like 10 lakhs or something, but for mathematical purposes, it is infinite. That you would treat it as infinite. So if you're getting it at initially, say, suppose P star was say 1,000, T is 100. So, PC becomes 1,000 plus 100, so 1,100. Right now, how much is the surplus for this person? It was initially P star into infinity, right? What is this? This triangle is not, sorry, this rectangle is not bounded at the top, right? It goes on till infinity. So now also it is infinity only. You can take P star, instead of P star, you take P plus T. That is also infinity. Is this making sense? Any problem with this? So after this, it will be, let me do this with another color. So now after your taxation, this orange star, this whole line, this part is your consumer surplus. Again going till infinity. So there is, technically there is a change. This triangle is the tax revenue collected, right? This is the tax revenue. So technically there should be a change in consumer surplus because of this tax revenue, which is coming out of the consumer's pocket. But because it is perfectly inelastic demand, his surplus remains almost the same. There's negligible change in the consumer surplus. So this is kind of like some of the most atypical scenarios which happen in the case of taxation that I wanted to discuss. Now after this I'll move on to week 4 content. Anything else you wanted to ask me from week 3? I can answer now. Somebody was asking about mm, elasticities, right? So there's not a huge difference between price elasticity and income elasticity and cross price elasticity. It just means that instead of okay, so sorry, 1 minute. So what we took was initially delta P by delta Q into Q by P. Was it the other way around? Hang on, sorry. Why is it not working? Okay, so I'll come to elasticity. Let me just check if there is any question on that in the week 3. Maybe I can just discuss that instead of this. Okay, there is no question. I thought there might be. 1 minute, let me just open previous week's assignment. Okay. So I uploaded the slides, by the way, from last week. I think I had forgotten to upload it last time, and I had kind of forgotten about it until today's class. So yeah, it is the other way around. I was just making sure I've got it right. Yeah, and why is it the other way around? Just thinking from common sense. It's because we're wanting to change the quantity based on uh, price. Like, how much is the quantity changing? What is the sensitivity towards change in. I want to actually share previous week's slides, but I'm afraid this whole PowerPoint will get disturbed. That's why I was opening it, but then I let it be. So we'll just do it this way. I'm just explaining very simply. If you still don't understand, you can look at it later. So this is what we call as price elasticity. Okay, now in this same thing, if you want to measure the change in quantity when your income changes, and that is income elasticity. That's all. Right, because the demand changes the change in income. Demand is assuming Q is a function of I, right? Where Q is, say, suppose written as P2 minus P plus I, something like that, for example. Then you see that the I is entering into the equation or into the expression for demand. So that is what it is. And there is also cross price elasticity. If you want to see the change in quantity based on the change in price of substitutes. So the same thing which we discussed last time about how the elasticities change and all, try to work it out and see how it varies with these two. It's not very complicated. The maths is very similar. It's kind of mathematically it is very similar, and intuitively, like you're just measuring the change in quantities based on price and based on income, based on price of substitutes, which we have all discussed actually in the last week. Except for income, I think we did discuss cross price as in price of substitutes and complements and things like that. I may not have used this term, so you can use this term and see if it makes a difference, but that is basically what it is. Okay, so here I will take a short 5-minute break and we will move on to consumer theory, which is mostly today. I don't think we've covered too much about utility in this particular week. So it's mostly the budget and the budget line. So I will leave you with this question. I will be back in 5-10 minutes. 10 minutes, let's say. I'm still here, I'm logged in, but I just need a break because I've been speaking for 1 hour. And this is the question. You can just read the question and solve it, and then we will discuss it. Okay, so I think most people have solved this. What do we do? How do we solve it? I think people have posted the answer on the chat. Somebody wants to attempt to answer?
Good evening, Ati. Can we write it
Yes,
like it is 5p plus 40c is equal to 2000?
we will come to the equation in a bit in the next question. That is what we will do. I don't think you have got it exactly correct. I mean, I don't know how you got it, but we'll come to the equation later. But that is why the questions are in a certain sequence. This is what you should
Okay.
be calculating first.
So five books are there for 2000. That means the each book should cost 2000 divided by 5, and
Yes,
20 cups of coffee. Then you divide
40 cups of
2000 by
coffee.
40. You get a.
Yes, exactly. So what we are doing here is it's a very simple exercise. I'm just making sure that everybody is on the same page. There's nothing complicated in this particular aspect. What we mean, we have not come to what happens when she is consuming both books and coffee. We are only saying that her total budget is 2000 and the number of books she can buy with that entire amount is 5. Either she can buy 5 books with 2000 rupees or she can buy 40 cups, which means if she spends the entire amount only on books, it is 2000 by 5 PB, let's call this, is equal to 400, and PC is 2000 by 40, so it is 50. So this is the correct answer. It's a simple question, but just making sure that everybody has got it right. Okay, so now we are just asking the equation. What is going to be the equation um, for this particular relation? How do you draw the budget relation? How do you write the budget relation and draw it? So what do you think it is going to be? You can take a few minutes to solve it. So now we know PB and PC. So what is the method? How do we do it? How do we come with the whole budget equation at all? Where do we start? Okay, some people have answered. Others? Okay, so let's see how we are going to do this. What is the basic fundamental equation? Basic fundamental equation is the constraint, right? The budget is, what is the budget basically? She can't overshoot her total expenditure of 2000 rupees, right? That is the constraint which we are working it. So it means her total expenditure has to be less than or equal to 2000, right? Now, this less than is important. It is important to understand that she can expend her money in any combination she wants as long as the total is less than 2000, right? So this less than is important, but for the moment if we just want to draw that budget line, we ignore the less than and we make it equal to instead. So instead of less than, for the moment we just make it as equal to 2000. So what is the total expenditure? The amount she spends on books plus the amount she spends on coffee, right? That is simple enough. That's because in this world, in Shirley's world, we are considering only two goods. We're considering only books and coffee. We're not considering anything else. And this is, it may seem like an unrealistic scenario, but it is not. Why? Because we have said that the budget constraint is 2000 rupees, which means she may be spending her money on n number of things, but the budget she has allocated for books and coffee out of her stipend or salary or whatever, pocket money, is 2000. In those 2000 rupees, she has to buy only books or coffee. Okay. Now, what happens if she buys only books? We already know. And what happens if she buys only coffee? We already know. And from that, we know the price of books and coffee. So, what is the amount spent on books? Number of books into price, right? So, this is the universal relation plus blah 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 Pn xn is equal to the budget. If I write it as B, or let's use income if we are just taking income as the constraint. Now, in this case, we have only two goods. This whole part with plus Pn x and all this we can erase, and we can just write it as I. But the basic idea is that the price of first good into the quantity of first good plus price of second good, quantity of second good, so on and so forth. Sum it all up and you get the constraint. Now, this should ideally be less than or equal to, but like I said, because we're just trying to find that equation of that line, constraint line, oh, sorry, we will make this as equal to. Is this clear to everybody? Any problem? Because many people did not answer this question. So I wanted to make sure that it is clear to everyone. Only, I think, yeah, only one person has answered it. So then what will it be? Price is what? 400 B plus 50 C is equal to 2000. Divide the whole thing, and what by, you can divide the whole thing by 50. What you get is 8B plus C is equal to 40. So this is the answer. Does it make sense now? So this is the whole explanation, what I just explained, and this is the line. And that 5 and 40 are the points where you consume only one good, what we call as corner solutions. And this is the other corner solution. Okay, so this is the whole budget set. This is the important part, that so far we have just to calculate the equation of the line, we have ignored that less than or equal to, but it's important because this is the whole budget set basically, or feasible set if we are using only money as a criteria for feasibility. Is this clear? At least just answer in yes or no, so I know if anything is not clear, I will explain again. Okay, all right. So we'll go to the next question. Now, we have to do the same thing. We already got the equation for the budget constraint or the budget line. Now, what do we do? What happens if we double the budget, or if we double the price of each item, or if we do both? Now, I mean, I've written the question only as what happens if we do both, but I want to discuss what happens if you do only one or only the other, and then what happens if we do both the things. We increase the price, increase the budget, double the budget, or if we double the price, or if we do both, increase the budget and the price. So take a few seconds, think, and then tell me what happens. I've not given any options, but you can just write your answer in the chat box. Okay, two people have answered something. Others? At least I just want you to attempt. So if there's something you're not following in what I have explained so far, please do let me know so I can explain it again. Okay, I think two people have answered the question. Others have not. So has everyone gone through the content for week 4? All the videos for week 4? Okay, so I think there's some issue with the internet here because which I'm getting disconnected. Just give me a moment. Let me log in from my iPad also. Yeah, so I was asking if you have any trouble with the budget relation and the budget whole concept of consumer choice. I'm asking the people who have not answered because only two people answered the question. So the others have not answered. That means they're not sure of it. Okay, this is not connecting. So for now, let me just share this on this computer itself. Okay, so hopefully you can see the screen. Yeah. Okay, so you can see the screen, I'm hoping. Yes, this was the question, right? Yes. So now let's go to what happens in the scenario that we double only the budget. Okay, this is what happens, right? So if the income doubles, then basically you have a bigger budget set. That's what it means, right? Income double means you can buy more. And if that is the case, then the budget line is going to shift. The budget is now what? It was initially I, say suppose it was P1x1 plus P2x2 equal to I. So now it is what? I plus 2000 or 2I, whichever way you want to see it. So it is going to shift outward. Right? If you just think of it in terms of, say, just like a linear shift to a line, right? So this is the case for shifting of.
It may be
Um,
unchanged.
sorry, somebody was saying
It may
something.
be unchanged.
What will be unchanged in which scenario? You have to tell me which scenario. I don't know why I got disconnected again. This is becoming very annoying. I mm, Let me see if it is still recording. Sorry, give me a moment. Yeah, it is recording. Okay. All right. So, yeah, somebody was speaking. I don't know who was speaking. Somebody was speaking. Could you repeat yourself? Sorry. Yes, I was asking you in what scenario does it remain unchanged? That was my question. You said it will remain unchanged. So I was just asking when will it remain unchanged?
Affordability for the coffee and the books, ma'am.
No, in which scenario? Like I said, if the budget changes or if the price changes or if both change. So in which scenario are you saying it's going to remain? Yeah, I'm sorry. My internet was completely in a very shabby way. So it's not connected. It's breaking again and again. If I get disconnected, please remain online. Um, yes. So let me share my screen again because the question is gone now. You can answer what the person who was speaking. Just let me know your name before you speak so that I know who is answering. Yes, so this is the question. So my question was that in which scenario is it going to remain unchanged? You didn't answer that part from at least I was for the part I was online. So can you repeat?
Mohit here. If
No, I'm
ma'am,
not
if
asking you.
both
I'm asking somebody
income,
else. I'm asking the person who was answering before. Please let me speak to the person who was answering before. I'm trying to make sure that everybody understands this class is not just for two people, right? Two people have already answered in the chat. I'm asking the people who have not answered on the chat. So I couldn't see because my screen was in full screen, so I couldn't see who was speaking. So who was speaking before when they said it will remain unchanged? Okay, she doesn't want to answer. So let's continue. But in the future, like when I'm sharing the screen, just know that I'm not able to see who is speaking. So please let me know who is speaking before you start speaking so that I know, who is answering. We can pick it up from there. Okay, so the reason
ma'am,
why I was emphasizing, yeah, yes, go
I
ahead.
have a doubt, ma'am. I have pinged
Yes, go ahead. Your voice is breaking. I can't hear you.
Ma'am, I have pinged one question. It was in the assignment, and I've got a doubt in that question, ma'am. It is to do with the utility line function and the way we calculated the second question, ma'am. Now, the utility function, it says it basically there are two items, ma'am, pineapple and
So
honey.
just assume it
The
is only
utility
honey. There
function
is an
is
error. There is an error in that question. I've already asked the TAs to post it in the discussion forum. That should be either only honey or hamburger. There's a mistake there. So it should, you can just assume the second part is also honey instead of hamburger.
no, ma'am. I think you are at a different question. What I am
No, I'm at
talking
the same
about is
question
they
which
are
you just
talking, ma'am.
posted in
You could
the,
see my
I just saw your
okay,
chat
ma'am.
message. Rohan consumes only two
Okay.
goods, pineapple and honey, blah, blah, blah. Price of pineapple is $3. Price of hamburger is $6. So I'm just saying it should not be hamburger, it should be honey. That is the first clarification I just wanted to give. What is your question?
No, ma'am. I'm not worried about honey and hamburger, ma'am. I'm worried about the utility function. It says is P plus 4H,
Okay.
and then when it talks of prices, it's 3 and 6.
Okay. See, utility
And
function,
ma'am,
it
now
can be
when we try
anything.
and calculate,
You have not come to that part
Roger, ma'am,
where,
it has got nothing.
see, let me finish.
Okay, that
Just
has got
either
nothing
you
to do with
speak or
the.
I speak. If both are speaking, nobody will understand, right? Let me speak first. So the utility function is given to you. This is not the budget function. Okay, there is a difference between utility function and budget function. Budget function or budget line or budget relation is calculated based on P1x1 plus P2x2 plus blah 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 Pn xn equal to income. Okay, That is your budget relation. But here what they is giving is the utility function. It is not the budget relation. His utility function is u of p comma h is equal to p plus 4h. Utility function can be any function in the world, depending on how you value those goods. It can be logarithmic, it can be exponential, it can be quadratic, it can be anything. Of course, within the bounds of whatever are the basic axioms of consumer theory, any function which satisfies those criteria, transitivity, convexity, blah blah blah, all the functions which actually fall into that that basic criteria, that basic framework, it can be any of those functions. So what you are saying is that the price is this. You're confusing it with the budget relation. The budget relation is not what they have given here. They've just given that the monthly income is $300, price of each they have given, and they have given the utility function. So now you calculate whatever you have to calculate. Okay, does that answer your question? I don't see him. Is he still online? Okay, I can't hear him, but I hope that answers your question. If there's anything else, you can message on the chat. Somebody has raised their hand. Yes, go ahead.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening. I'm Durga. Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Question which Mr. Harmoon was asking. Ma'am, how to proceed in this question? Like, I'm stuck, ma'am. Actually, I'm whatever lectures I saw, I can do budget constraint questions, but when it speaks of utility function, like with whatever
Okay.
with that information, I'm not finding a way to go carry on.
Yeah, actually, you guys have not studied utility properly right now. That's the reason why you're feeling stuck. So I'll explain it in a simple way for now. But just know that there's nothing to worry about, because once you guys study, the whole chapter on utility, it will hopefully become much simpler from there. So for this, I will have to write, which means I will have to connect my iPad, and let's hope I can do that simply. So just give me a moment. Let me connect my, I can get my iPad again. Okay. So I will come back to the question we were on, but this part I just want to answer for now what she's asking about utility and what Harmohit was also asking. So I think you people are getting confused. So firstly, there is not much to be confused about. Okay, utility function. Oops, this is too dark. So utility function basically gives you some sort of a relation between your preferences. So far, what we have assumed implicitly, not said it explicitly in most of the questions, is that you prefer both the goods the same amount, right? You're indifferent in terms of your preferences. Okay, so suppose I say utility, I have two goods. Again, let's use this example only, books and coffee. Okay, utility is equal to 2 books plus coffee. That is how my utility is given. What I will want to do is I will want to maximize my utility, right? The objective is always maximize your utility. Now, I have just made up this relation right now. So, if it doesn't solve, don't get confused. I'm just explaining the process to you. Okay, the answer may be weird, it may be right, may be wrong, whatever. So what we were given as the budget was, let me just open that equation. Where is our equation? It was 8b plus c, right? 8b plus c is equal to 40. That was a budget relation. And I will come back to what happens when we change prices and when we change income. this was the equation, the budget relation. Right now we know this and we know this, or let me put this as 2. This is equation 1. This is equation 2. Now here I'm going to use calculus, or you may not use calculus if you don't want to. Sometimes the function may be very simple. But what we'll do here is that if we follow this constraint, so in this situation, what we were doing, we were only looking at the budget constraint and looking at all the possible consumption values for books and coffee, right? This is, I don't remember which axis we took what. Yeah, books and coffee. So say suppose it was something like this, right? 40. And 5. Now what we were doing is we were establishing this set. Okay, we have not picked any final value. And all we know is that if we pick some value, if we say 30 units of coffee, then what is the range of, how many books can this person buy? So we know the relation. If C is 38, B is equal to 10, you can calculate what is the value of B from there, right? That is all we were saying. And if you make this as less than equal to, then you will get even, it becomes, the situation becomes even more simple, right? You know that all of these values are possible, right? Does that mean that utility? Yes, they're not related. You have not studied that part, so don't get confused. We will come to indifference curves. Hopefully, I think it will be covered in week 5. We'll come to indifference curves and utility. Now, the utility of a person is usually plotted in form of indifference curves, which is something like this. Each of these indifference curves has some value of utility. So this is U1, this is U2, this is U3, this is U4, and so on and so forth. And all the possible combinations of B and C on each point of this curve gives the same utility, which is why this utility function can be anything, right? So this is U2, this is U3. You can see, so what we are trying to do is that we will eventually, in week 5, we will try to find the utility function or utility curve intersection point, or let's draw this again. Let me erase this. We'll try to find the consumption values B and C for which utility is maximized, for the maximum utility that is achieved between the budget and the utility constraints. So there is one budget constraint that you cannot exceed this budget. So this budget line is sacrosanct for us. We can never exceed this. And we want to find the closest curve, closest indifference curve, which touches this budget line or is within this budget line, within the budget set, which gives us the maximum utility. So if you're not fully understanding this right now, don't worry about it, because you will study indifference curves and then you will understand what I'm talking about. But budget constraint also means that, say, suppose I say C is equal to 40 minus 8B, right? We can write it this way also. Now from this, we substitute the value in this equation, 2B plus 40 minus 8B. Now I think this is looking a little bit funny, so let me just go with it for now. But now you can see for which value of B this will be, okay, yeah, this is not the linear relation, so it's not that easy to maximize it. Yeah, so I will have to figure out which function to take here. This is linear utility is usually not kind of preferred. Let's say it is something like this. Let me change the function. 2B into C. Okay, let's do it like this. The budget line will change. So that depends on what you are calculating, right? With respect to what? I'll answer your question in a minute. Just Let me first answer one question. Okay, so now you have a quadratic function 8 dBs. Right. So now again, you may not get an answer because I've just made up these values in front of you. I was not expecting to discuss this. But what we will do is, what we want is maximization of this utility function. So we maximize utility, right? So now you will take du by db, and that is 80 minus 32b, which gives you b is equal to 80 by 32, whatever that value is, you can calculate that. Right, so you get some value of b here from this condition, and you plug that back into the budget equation, you will get the value of c. So this is how you generally go about it. This is what, 4, 2.5. Okay, so you plug that back into that equation. 8 into 2.5 plus c is equal to 40. It's what? Yeah, something is wrong. Yeah, then c is negative. There's something is wrong. I've done some mistake here. No, this value should probably not be 2.5. It will be 2.5. If you've taken it properly, it should come out actually. I don't know why this is not coming out properly. Again, I had given a caveat in the beginning itself. If the values don't work out, then no, it will work out. It's 20, sorry. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, I was multiplying by 4 instead of 2. Yeah, this is 2.5. Yeah, plug that back into 8 into 2.5 plus c is equal to 40. This is 20 plus c is equal to 40. C is equal to 20. This is how you will solve it in case there is, I give you that the utility relation is something like this. Okay, but in our case, which is why if you read the question properly, the question which I wrote, I have mentioned that she prefers books and coffee equally, which means that I have just defined, that you don't have to worry about the utility function, which is why I gave that kind of a relation in this question, which I made up. This is a question I have made up actually. It's not a question from any book. So this is your how you go about questions which have a utility function. I just wanted to take it up to sort of help you people solve the assignment at least. Otherwise, you will get confused because you've not studied. So they ideally should not have included that question, but anyway, it's there. So any questions now? It's not very complicated. At least in the question, I think which you're given, it's a very simple question. Usually, see, I've taken this as B2, B into C because that's the form in which you usually get utility functions. So this is a like hyperbola kind of a thing. This is what your function is going to be like, U2BC. This is what your utility function is going to be like. So for different values of B and C, you will get these kind of curves, which we call as indifference curves. Okay, so let's come back to our original problem. What we were talking about was question. Where is the question? Yeah, so we were talking about in this same, let's come back to the same equation, 8b plus c is equal to 40. Now, if the income increases, if income doubles, what happens? Income doubles. You just get 8b plus c is equal to 80, which means what? This is your original curve, or let me make it smaller. This is your original curve. This sort of shifts outwards, right? This is 40 and this is 5. This will become This will be something more. You can calculate and see what it comes out to be. It will be double usually, right? So this is 5, this will probably be 10, this will probably be 80. If price doubles of both items, now I'm talking about both items, then what do you have? You had like 400, instead of 400B, you have 800B plus 100C is equal to 4,000, sorry, 2,000. Income is not doubling, income is the same. Then you divide the whole thing by 100 and you get this, which means what? That the curve is shifting inwards, right? I'm talking about the case where both the goods have prices increasing. So then, let me make it in some other color. Then it is shifting inwards. And what is going to happen? Obviously, you will not be able to buy as much. Just think everything in common sense terms if you feel confused. Prices increasing means you will definitely not be able to buy as much quantity of that good as you were buying before, right? So that is the scenario. Okay, now let me go back to our question on this itself. And this was the original consumption set. This is now, sorry, the budget set. Now this is the budget set. Okay, this is the new diagram. Now let's come to the next question. I want to actually finish this question in this class because this has covered all aspects of the whole budget scenario and consumption scenario. So let's quickly do this. Now I am just going to give you 2 minutes to think over this. This is the question. Tell me what happens in this scenario. You can draw it for yourself if you want. You can draw a picture of this budget line and post it in the messages. And the main thing is that now Shirley is constrained. Now she cannot drink more than 20 cups of coffee. So what happens in this scenario? Okay, done. Is everyone attempted? Okay, so let's go to this. This was the original graph, right? This was the original budget line, and this was the original values at the p equal to 0 and c equal to 0 points. Now what we know is that c cannot be less than 20. Oh, sorry, c cannot be more than 20. That is all that is given. Nothing else is changed. So the budget is the same. The prices are the same. The everything else is basically the same. There is no other change in preferences, any other changes. Only thing is that now she has to ration her consumption. She cannot increase C even if she reduces B. There is an external constraint, right? No, she can buy more books now. Yes, she can buy more books, but she cannot increase C by reducing her books. That is what I'm trying to say. So what we are dealing with is that the budget line is remaining the same. That is an important point which I wanted to emphasize. Budget line remains the same, which means that the slope of the budget line will not change. It is just that it cannot go beyond this point. Beyond this point, this whole line is not going to be there. It's going to be cut off at this point. The slope is not changing. It is just that we have imposed this new constraint over here, which is C has to be less than or equal to 20. Right? Is this making sense? Which means that your
Ma'am, I have
budget
a
set.
doubt here.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Ma'am, that means if she only wants to buy coffee, the
Yeah.
maximum coffee she will buy is 20, and the rest of the budget will go waste or they won't be utilized.
Yes. Yes.
Roger, ma'am.
So that is exactly the point I was just explaining, which means that your whole budget set has reduced to only this part. Okay, this triangle part is not in your budget set anymore. Right? Why is that? Because for that much consumption of coffee, you can consume, see, say suppose she wants to consume only this much number of books, whatever this value is, some X value of books. Okay, at this value of books, she could have consumed something, say suppose 35 cups of coffee. Now, even if she reduces it to this value X, maximum she can consume is still 20 coffee. She cannot consume 35. So for books, you can still vary from 0 to 5. There is no constraint on the quantity or the amount of books. But coffee is not going to increase beyond this point 20, which is why we are removing this part. This part is lost. The remaining part remains because the books you can vary, only this part you cannot vary anymore. You cannot exceed 20 anymore. This is a hard deadline. So initially, if it was this, it will become this, what I have drawn on the diagram. So this is what happens when you're rationing. So remember, I've given a very simple question. Actually, if I erase this, you can actually see I've actually hashed it here. So This whole hashed part is lost. This is your new budget cell. Okay. So it means that even after reducing her consumption to 20, she cannot, but you see the budget is still the same, right? Budget line is still the same. There is no other shock to the budget line, which means even if you reduce your consumption to 20, you cannot increase books beyond this point at 20. This is whatever this value at 20 is. I think it was 2.5, right? If I'm not mistaken. So you still cannot increase for consuming for C equal to 20. You cannot increase books beyond 2.5, right? If you want to increase books beyond 2.5, you have to reduce C. But after you reduce C, you can, but you cannot increase C, right? Even if you reduce B. You're understanding what I'm saying? Even if you reduce your books to X value, you cannot go beyond 20, even though original curve says that you can. This is not allowed anymore. So it's a subtle point, but it is important to understand. Some questions may be framed in a more tricky way with this whole rationing concept. So be careful. Okay, in the whole case of rationing, where you're just adding this constraint, this less than or equal to on one of the goods, especially. If it is on both the goods, then just like you have a vertical line here, you will have a horizontal line here. If say suppose if books are constrained also, don't get confused by vertical and horizontal lines. See which good is being constrained, right? So if B is less than or equal to 4, then you will have a horizontal line like this. Then this part will also be lost. You understanding what I'm saying? So see which good is being constrained, right? If books are being constrained, you will draw a horizontal line at 4, if 4 is the constraint. Here coffee is being constrained, so we're drawing a vertical line at 20. And it is not allowed to go beyond 20. Okay, I hope this is clear now. Let's go to the next question. We still have another question to, two more questions to cover in the next 15 minutes. Now let's go in the original problem. Original, like without any of these constraints and all that. Shirley gets a prize money voucher of 200 rupees, which she can spend on books, only on books, not on coffee. So then what happens to the budget line? I'm giving you 2 minutes to think. If you want, you can draw it and send it in the messages. So you can message and tell me what happens. Okay, anyone wants to answer?
Hello, ma'am. Hello.
Yes,
I think she can buy half book more now.
she can buy half book more. Okay. Any other answer?
Ma'am, the number of books that she can buy will increase, and there will be a rectangle kind of a thing which will come next to the axis of C, which she cannot buy, coffee side. That will go out of the budget set.
Can you draw the diagram and send it to me? You can just post the picture. You can just take a picture of the diagram and post it in the messages.
Ma'am, I think that's not permitted, is it?
Yeah, you can send. It allows all media.
Roger, ma'am, I'll just draw it.
Okay, so in the meantime, let's go back to the question. This is your question. Okay, this is where we were. This is the original budget set, and what we have here is the slope will be steeper. Somebody saying no, the slope will not change. Why will the slope change? See, this is not a case where you have increase in income. Her income is not increasing. This is what I wanted to emphasize. If you have, if she is given 200 rupees as a prize money where she can spend on anything, then you have, what was the equation? Let me write the original equation. What was our original equation? It was, I think, 400B plus 50C is equal to 2000. Right? That was our original equation. Now, 2000, some people are saying that the income will increase by 2000. It will not increase by 2000 because this is not disposable income. What she has given, she's given only a voucher. She's not given money which she can spend on anything she wants. She can only use that voucher to use on books alone. This is an important point. Okay. If she were given 200 as money, not voucher, then this equation would be 400B plus 50C is equal to 2200, right? Because then it is her disposable income. She can spend on anything she wants, and then your income, budget line would increase to something like that. That is not what is happening. What she is getting is she can just use that 200 rupees is 0.5B. So not E, this is equal to 0.5B, right? So here you have this value 0.5B, and now because she has to use that voucher, she doesn't want to waste that voucher, right? So initially what she was doing, she could have consumed 0 books and 40 cups of coffee, right? But now the problem is that she cannot consume 0 books. She has to use that voucher, otherwise that voucher will go waste. It's a prize money. But when she uses that voucher, and in this, of course, we are assuming all goods are continuously divisible. Okay, we're not taking it as a step function. I've assumed it as a continuous line, which means that it is all books and coffee are continuously divisible. So 2.5, 2.6 books, everything is allowed. But we're taking a weekly budget, right? So if you average over, say, 100 weeks, then you can, of course, say that the consumption per week is 2.5 books or 2.2 books or whatever you want to say. So in that case, she has an extra 0.5 books which she has to consume. She's mandated to consume that. That is the point which is kind of important here, which means that when she consumes 0.5 books, she cannot consume 40 cups of coffee now. She has to consume whatever this value is. So this line is the new, this kinged line is the curve. I don't know if I have drawn it in the diagram. I don't remember. But this is what is happening. This whole shaded red area is the new budget set. And this part is no longer part of the budget set. So in this case, what she has is she can use that voucher to cover the cost of this 0.5 books, and the remaining part remains the same. Is that clear? This is the voucher which she has received. This she will use she'll expense it from the voucher which she's got. So she will cover this much 0.5 books cost, she will cover from the voucher, but her overall income has not increased, right? And this she wants to use, so she will use this for buying books, but she cannot buy 0 books anymore. So think about it. Sometimes you get some voucher for using some shop services or something else. Now, ideally, the reason why they give you the voucher is because they want you to come and make use of their services, and they want to sort of, it's a kind of like a marketing method actually. So what happens in these vouchers is that they give you the vouchers especially to those people who are not going to consume it in the first place. Right now, I'm not saying that is the case in this particular example, but I'm just giving you the overall understanding here that a lot of times the vouchers you get are for things which you are not consuming anything of. Right? Your original consumption was probably 0, but now because you got the voucher, you are going to expense it because you don't want it to go waste. So you will go for that particular dinner or that brunch or whatever where you have a 500 rupees voucher. Now you may end up spending 5,000 rupees over there, right? Just to use that voucher. Out of that 5,000, you will expense 500 rupees from the voucher, right? But the total expenditure is maybe whatever amount, but you will now consume something non-zero value, right? You have, say, suppose a voucher of 500 rupees for a brunch at a 5-star hotel or some nice new outlet around town. Now, if you have that 500 rupees voucher, you will go and try out that place. And earlier you were consuming 0 over there. Now that 0 is not an option for you. Now you will go and you will use that voucher, and along with using that voucher, you may end up, buying something more or spending more than that voucher amount. Right? But the minimum amount you will spend will be that voucher amount now. So that is, try to think of it in those terms, then this will make sense. Otherwise, you will, it's a bit unintuitive. It's not that intuitive what happens in this scenario. So in this scenario, that is the only thing that will happen, that this blue triangle, which I have colored, is going to get removed from her budget set. Okay, let's go to the next question. This is a different question. And I think this covers all the concepts in the consumer section in the budget line, budget constraint part. So again, I'm giving you 2 minutes just to think over it, and then we will discuss it. Okay, answers. Now, in the previous example where we were talking about the voucher thing, just remember for which good we are given the voucher. It's very easy to get confused when you have studied it for a good which was on the horizontal line, but the voucher is, in the exam question, the voucher is given for a good which is on the vertical line. It's very easy to get confused. You will apply it in the wrong way. So just remember that what we are trying to do is we're trying to remove the zeroth value for that particular good. Okay, instead of 0, now that the voucher is some value v, then instead of 0 for that particular good, the consumer will now consume v instead. Okay, so be careful for which good you're applying it. If it's on the vertical axis, it will be, vertical. If it's horizontal, you will move it up. Okay, otherwise you will, even after knowing the concept, you may get it wrong. Okay, so this is a situation which is again a little bit different. It's on the same line as the example taken in the class, I think, but it is slightly different in that, this is an example of where you buy bulk of something, you get a discount, right? In many places, if you buy one ream of paper, say suppose you pay some amount, 300 rupees or whatever, but if you buy 100 reams of paper, you will pay much lesser, right? Wholesale market. So whether it is realistic or not, I'm not talking about that right now, but this particular question is the question which we will focus on. Say suppose the person consumes only apples and water. This is an example for that question. For that person, apples cost $1 each and water can be purchased for 50 cents each. 50 cent is $1. Okay, so PW is 0.5, PA is 1 per gallon, and up to 20,000 gallons, and 10 cents per gallon for each gallon beyond 20,000. So PW prime, let's say, is 0.1. I'm just explaining this in case you're not familiar with the US pricing system of cents. And don't worry about gallons. Gallons is just a measure of volume, similar to liter. There is some conversion factor. But just go by the principles here. I've taken this question from the book, which is there in your reference reading. Forgotten the name. One of the books, the one for which you have the hyperlink. Okay, so now what happens to this particular example? Okay, because we're already kind of out of time, I will go directly to the answer. Now here is your usual equation. Your budget constraint is 200 is your income. So what is the equation for water less than 20,000? It's A into 1. I've used small letters here. Don't confuse that. This is your equation. Small a is the quantity of apples. 1 is the price of apples. Plus W is the quantity of water into 0.5 is the price of water. Now this is for this particular case. All right. Is equal to 200. This is the dotted black line that I have drawn. Right. If we are on this curve, if this is the scenario, this line is this black dotted line. Okay, this is the line. Now, if W is greater than 20,000, then the price changes. What is the price now? It is A is still into 1. Budget is still the same, which is 200, but W into 0.1, which means the slope is going to change. Is that not it? So this is going to be the new line. So this is this line. This green line, this part, you can extend it out in a dotted way like this if you want. This is the line for W greater than 20,000, right? And this is the line for W less than 20,000. Again, the example you have in the class is of price increasing after a certain quantity. Okay, so which is why the curve is becoming steep. So that is why don't be so quick to answer. If the price was increasing after 20,000, then this curve would become something like this instead of this line. Be careful of what the question is actually saying. Don't ever mug up things in economics. This is an important thing. If you want to do well in economics, don't ever mug up anything in economics. Always try to understand the concepts, otherwise you will get badly confused the moment the language is changed or the values are changed or something is new in the question. Yeah, somebody was saying something.
Ma'am, I have a small doubt in this.
Yeah.
Now, ma'am, we are saying the cost of water is 0.5 for first
Yeah.
20,000.
Yeah.
So, ma'am, if it is point, okay, sorry, ma'am, I got it. I read it wrong. Fine, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So you understood what I'm saying? So if this price, instead of 0.1, if this was say 0.8 after 20,000, then the curve would be something like this, right? The curve would not be this green line, but it would be this blue line, right? Let me write it here. PW is 2.8 for, which is why I've taken a different kind of an example in the class from what was discussed in your lectures. 0.5 at 20,000, not per unit price. I didn't understand your question, but let me move on because I think there's still some concepts I need to cover. So in this case, what you're seeing is that because the price is reducing, right? In this case, what we are doing is price is reducing up to 20,000. What is happening to your budget set? It's increasing, right? Earlier, if there was no change in price, this would be your budget set, right? Now, because the price has reduced after 20,000, all this part is also your budget set. It is getting included in your budget set, and that stands to reason, right? Now, earlier you were only able to consume this part, right, till here. This part only you were able to consume. Now, because prices are lower, you are able to consume more, but more things, more of water becomes affordable, because at that rate, $0.5, water was not affordable for you beyond 40,000 gallons. But now, because the rate of water beyond 20,000 is $0.1 or 10 cents, a lot more water is affordable for you, which is why you can now consume up to 200,000 gallons of water in the same budget. The budget is not changing, right? Your budget is not changing. The price of the other good apples is also not changing. Maximum amount of apples you can consume is also not changing. It is still 200. But if, for example, if you consume no apples, only water, then amount of water you can consume increases. And because price of water has changed, you can also, for the same amount of apple consumption, you can now consume more water. Earlier, it was still here. If you were consuming, say suppose this was 80 apples, you were stuck with some value here, but now you can consume a lot more water for that much consumption of apples. So spend a little bit of time thinking about what is happening. If you're consuming only two goods, price of one good is decreasing, price of the other good remains the same. After a certain quantity, that price is changing. That is the example I've given. What is happening really? For that same consumption of apples, you're able to consume more water. That stands to reason, right? If I'm buying only, say, pens and pencils, and my budget is only, say, 100 rupees, pens are still costing, say, 10 rupees per pen. Pencils were costing, say, 2 rupees per pencil. Now it is costing 1 rupee per pencil. I can buy more pencils, right? Simple maths. Don't mug up, because if you mug up, you will get confused. If you think from this kind of everyday language, that don't think in big terms. You can just think in simple terms like pens and pencils, apples and oranges, things like that, whatever makes sense to you. So if you try to reason it out like that, you will get it much faster. You will be able to understand the intuition much faster. So I think this is it for this week. I don't think there is anything else left in this. Yeah, this is it. So any other questions if you guys have? Yeah, quickly, you have a doubt, go ahead. Any doubts, please go ahead. Otherwise, I will end the class here, and hopefully I will upload all of these slides. I think last class notes I forgot to upload. I will upload those also. Slides I uploaded, class notes I forgot to upload. For today, class notes and these annotated slides I will share with all of you guys. And please make some time to read this part. Now, you may find the difficulty that in most of the textbooks, they talk about utility first, and then they talk about budget. So they will show you diagrams which have utility and indifference curves, and questions will also have utility function, and then the budget constraints. So, you may feel a bit confused, but if you go through the week 5 content also and then study it, it will all make a lot of sense. Okay, so take some time to read it from the books also if you're feeling a bit unsure. And there's one more book which you can refer to if you like, Pindyke and Rubenfield. It has some questions. You can refer to those. It has some solved questions also. Other than that, I think most of the books I have mentioned should be more than enough. Okay, so I'll end the class here. If you have any questions, you can post it on the discussion forum. I will discuss it in the next class. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.